Hey everyone, welcome back. My name's Dustin Kreis, and today we're going to do a game discussion, and we're going to talk about this game right here, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Of course, on the PlayStation. It's also on the Japanese Sega Saturn, and you can play it like I did, which is on PSN, and I played it on my Vita. So you can have this amazing game portable. The Vita is an amazing system. I love it. Anyway, this game is without a doubt a masterpiece. It is a fantastic game. I love the quote-unquote Metroidvania style of gameplay. And as much as I bitch and complain about there not being a new 2D Metroid, I keep forgetting that on my shelves, I have tons upon tons of 2D Castlevania games to play. And this is one, when I got my PS1, or sorry, my PS2, because I never owned a PS1 when it was first out. This was one of the games that I originally went to track down. And it's so funny that I thought this game was expensive back in the day when I found this for like 25 bucks. And I don't know what the price is on Castlevania Symphony of the Night these days. And this is, of course, a greatest hits version, but I don't really care about that. But the prices just kind of go up and down and fluctuate. But I remember, buying a bunch of PS1 games when I got my PS2 and being like, gosh, this one's pretty expensive. But I played this way back, oh God, how long ago was that? Like 14 years ago? Oh, that's probably older than some of you guys out there. Played this about 14 years ago. And got to the second castle and just got super frustrated and put it down. And I'd go back to it every now and again. But I never actually sat down and finished the game. It's just one of those things. My college years, finishing games, I was a little bit spotty on. And then once I started getting really back into video games again, this was something that I always wanted to go back and finish, and I finally did. And without a doubt, this is one of the greatest games ever made. I love the 32-bit 2D sprite style. I think that the PlayStation and the Saturn hold some of the most gorgeous games out there. I love that they're very well animated. Alucard in this game is amazingly animated. And I love how detailed they are, but yet they still have that of the era style to it. You can look in sort of modern retro-ish games like Scott Pilgrim and things like that. And while it kind of feels retro and kind of looks retro, it doesn't have that of the era pixelation that I love. I'm looking up at my PS1 shelf and I'm just like, God damn it. So many games on that shelf I still need to play, and I'm going to... sorry, I had a burp there. I'm going to get to it. My Japanese Saturn, I want to play some of these Japanese games. Even on the DS Castlevanias kind of have that of the era style. And it's sadly... in the big market, in the major, system markets, these types of games are getting relegated to sort of the indie scene. Whereas, Konami's not making much of anything these days, and I don't know what they're going to do with Castlevania. Really wish Konami would just start selling off properties and companies that would actually do something with the properties, buy them. That'd be fantastic. But I really wish Konami would go back to, because this is really like the bread and butter right here. This is when people think Castlevania, they think 2D side-scrolling action. Lords of Shadow and sort of the PS2 era games and things like that were kind of an anomaly. But most of the Castlevania series is that 2D style, and I like Metroid. I think that is where it is supposed to be. So, what do we need to say about Castlevania Symphony of the Night? What could be said about this game that hasn't been said before? This game takes place. It is a direct sequel to Rondo of Blood, which is another one of the great Castlevania games. I have a burnt copy for my PC Engine Duo, and I do plan on playing through that game sometime this year. I don't know when. But you take the role as Alucard, Dracula's son, which is a kind of a ridiculous name when you think about it, because Alucard is just Dracula backwards. Spoiler alert, sorry. But anyway, Dracula's castle is only supposed to come out at specific times. And for some reason, all of a sudden, even though it had just come out a few years prior with Richter Belmont and him defeating Dracula, all of a sudden the castle is just spawned out again out of, no real reason. No one knows why. So Alucard sets out to sort of figure out why Dracula's castle is back and to defeat his father and send him back to wherever it is Dracula goes when he gets defeated. Because he just keeps coming back. So many times, in Castlevania, he's come back, But that's what we like about these video game villains. We like them to come back. What would Mega Man be without Dr. Wily? Mega Man 4 was such a weird game when you had to fight Dr. Cossack. And then, of course, because it didn't really say that Wily was anywhere in the game. And then you get to the end, you find out that Wily is pulling the strings. And everything felt right in the world again. What would Castlevania be without Dracula? Even though there's a few Castlevanias where you don't fight Dracula. But, from a storyline perspective, these types of games, the story is just kind of there to keep you going, keep you interested. This is not like a big JRPG story. Coupled with the audio, which we'll talk about when we get to the audio, the story is good, but it's very hammy and it's very of the era. If you were a big PlayStation 1 game player, you realize that the voice acting of that era was abysmal at best. Looking at you, Resident Evil. God, that first game. But anyway, there was some good voice acting on the PS1. I guess I shouldn't lump everything together. But for the most part, the voice acting was pretty awful. And this one is, no exception. But, it's a very interesting take on, the Castlevania lore. Because I think up to that point, pretty much every Castlevania you played as a Belmont. Or someone related to the Belmont family. And this is the first time, I think... Well, no, in Dracula's Curse, you got to play as Alucard, too. But, there was a kind of a big deal back in the day. You got to play as Alucard in this. And really just a cool story. Also, it kind of, this is not a big spoiler because it makes, this within the first half hour. It looks like Richter, the hero from the first game, is the villain for a long time, and that's really cool. I really think that's cool that they make him look like the villain. It's kind of a nice twist on Rondo of Blood. And this is, if anyone complains about spoilers, this is an almost 20-year-old game. So if you haven't played it or figured out the storyline in that intervening time, well, that's not my fault. Gameplay, Metroidvania. I absolutely love this style. I think that the 2D side-scrolling adventure games like Metroid, Monster's Tale, Cave Story, things like that. I just love these games where it's side-scrolling action, but yet you have this huge map to explore, and you have to backtrack and go back to places once you get new abilities. I love that style. Absolutely love that style. Mix in a little bit of JRPG stuff with equipment and leveling up and things like that, and you just have a fantastic game. Fantastic game. There are a bunch of these like little quirky things. You'll get the shield rod, and you'll think, oh, this is cool. And nowhere in the game does it tell you about the shield rod's abilities, but that weapon is game breaking. Especially when you mix it with a certain shield and you figure out how to do shield spells. Game breaking. Absolutely game breaking, but a fun little thing. And it's kind of cool because you collect so much equipment, and the sort of mixing of equipments and things like that, you can make some really interesting combinations, and some weird things happen in the game with the equipment and stuff like that. So it bears exploring this. It's a bit, you get a bit too much equipment and too many items, I think. I think they could have slimmed it down a little bit, but then again, it kind of keeps in line with that, I don't know, the wackiness of the game, because there is, especially when, excuse me, when you throw in the voice acting, the game is kind of wacky. We'll get to that voice acting in a minute. Everyone knows about Castlevania Symphony of the Night's voice acting. Or if you don't, just YouTube it right now. God, it's amazing and terrible at the same time. Not as bad as some games, but still pretty bad. But yeah, you have this amazingly laid out castle, because, Zebes or Zebes, however you want to say it, in Metroid, and Super Metroid, there's kind of a logic to it, but at the same time, it kind of feels a bit smashed together, I guess. Whereas the castle in Symphony of the Night, the layout of the floor plan and everything, it kind of feels like it makes sense until you get to the sort of second half of the game, and then everything's topsy-turvy and doesn't make sense anymore. But the layout of the castle actually kind of does make sense in a weird way. So, kudos to the level design for this. But yeah, if you've played a Metroid or a Castlevania before, you know exactly what to expect in this. Just a whole hell of a lot of fun. You get all these crazy abilities, like the ability to turn into a bat, turn into a cloud of mist, to turn into a wolf, which the wolf feels incredibly pointless until you get to a certain spot. And then, again, it doesn't tell you, and I'm not going to tell you, there's a certain spot, and basically it's just if you want to be a completionist. But the wolf can do something that they never even make mention of, and if it wasn't for me looking up how to do something in the game, I would have never known that the wolf can do this. But the wolf does have its use. The only bad part is when you play on the Vita, you don't have L2 and R2. They're on the touch screen. And I had to turn the wolf ability off, because my fingers naturally rest on that touch screen. And that touch screen is L2 and R2. And R2 is what you use to control the wolf powers, to turn into a wolf. So I was just constantly turning into a wolf at the most inopportune times. So eventually I just turned that off, and it really didn't affect my gameplay, except when I got to those little areas, and then I turned the wolf power back on. If you're playing on a PS1 or PS2 controller, you're not going to have this problem. It's going to work fantastic. But that's one of the little caveats of playing games on the Vita that use L2 and R2, is that it's on the touchpad, and that kind of sucks. I wish they would have just put two. How hard would it have been to put two buttons? Put two buttons there. Put a button and a trigger. How hard would that have been? I know it's supposed to be a portable system, but the Vita is not really a portable system in the traditional sense. So they could have put little triggers on there, and you could carry it in a case, because I carry it in a case anyway. Vita's not meant to put in a pocket. Anyway. Gameplay is fantastic. Absolutely just a gem of a game. Really, where this game shines is sort of in the superfluous. I can never say that word, so I shouldn't have used it. But really in the more of the presentation. That's really where the game shines. The graphics. Beautiful 2D sprites. The animation on Alucard is almost... It's so good that it's almost pornographic in a way, because you're looking at it, and his body movements are just so fluid. You couldn't even imagine drawing all the individual frames of animation, because that sprite has individual frames of animation for those sprites. It's just a lot of work, and to see him, how fluidly he moves on that screen, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. Coupled in the fact that every now and then when you start moving forward, you leave a trail of shadows behind you. Now, this effect has been way overused in the later Castlevania DS games and things like that. But when this first came out, and I was first playing it back, not when it first came out, but when I was playing it 14 years ago, I thought that was absolutely amazing. I thought that was just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. The backgrounds of the levels look amazing. Um, the enemies' animations are a little bit more stiff, but it makes sense them being monsters and things like that. But the game is just from top to bottom absolutely gorgeous, fantastic looking, amazing. One of the best looking games of its era. Even today, the game looks astounding. But of course, I'm a big 2D sprite, 16-bit, 32-bit era, big fanboy of that. So, of course, I'm going to think it's amazing looking. The second place where this game shines is the music. Castlevania's music gets talked about for a very specific reason, in the fact that they're just flat out gorgeous tracks. From the more propulsive rocking ones to sort of the more creepy ones to the very orchestral based ones. Just through and through, the tracks in the Castlevania games always are good. I've not run into, I mean, there's a few I like less than others, but as far as like just a bad track in the Castlevania games I've played, I have not come across one yet. The only flaw the presentation of this game has, and it's just because it's a product of its era, it's a casualty of its era, is the voice acting. It's just as bad as you've ever heard. The writing, the translation is just very... I kind of get what they're going for, in that it kind of feels like a, I don't know, like an old monster movie or something like that. But it just doesn't work. It really takes you out of the game, because you just start laughing whenever somebody talks, because Alucard talks in a very overly sort of heroic sense. You know, the enemies, they all kind of talk like this, you know, in a very overly exaggerated sort of evil way. Everything's just very stilted in the voice acting, and the lines. It just feels like it was written like it feels like a high school play. That's what it feels like. It feels like a high school, like they just went into a high school, grabbed a bunch of people, and like the drama club, and just said, "Here, read these lines," and that's how it was. Here, you're Dracula, you're the bad guy. Read these lines. Ha 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 ha. You know, that kind of nonsense. It doesn't detract from the overall game. The gameplay and the graphics and the music and everything about the game overcomes that. It's that one just bad point in it. And because the rest of the game is so perfect, that bad point sticks out like a sore thumb. So it does bear discussion, but at the same time, it's not going to deter you from playing this. So anyway, Symphony of the Night. Probably the easiest way to get this is on PSN. I do not know what the prices are on this. The Japanese Saturn version, interestingly enough, graphically, the PlayStation is the superior port. The Japanese Saturn version, for some reason, the graphics just aren't as good. But the Saturn version does have like extra content. So if you're a big fanatic of this game, it might be worth your time to track that down and see what the extra content is, and see what the graphical differences is. Sometimes I like to see what the graphical differences between the ports are. But generally speaking, the PlayStation port is the way to go. This is also on the PSP Dracula X Chronicles. However, this port I've heard bad things about. You have to unlock it, one. This also has Rondo of Blood on it too. Basically, it has two versions of Rondo Blood and Symphony of the Night on here. It has the updated version of Rondo. It has the original PC Engine version of Rondo, and then it has the PS1 version of Symphony of the Night. However, these games have been stretched out for widescreen for the PSP, and I've heard some bad things about these ports. So I can't wholeheartedly recommend this, because I actually really dislike the remade port of Rondo of Blood. I really dislike it. So I can't really recommend you picking up that. I would say either track down an old PS1 disc or just download it off PSN for, it's probably like $10 if it's not on sale, which PSN does flash sales all the time, so you can probably get it for cheaper. But seriously, guys, if you're a fan of Castlevania, Metroid, that style, or if you've never played a Castlevania before in your life, and you want to know what all the hype and the talk is about, that's where I recommend you start. I think Symphony of the Night is just the perfect entry point to the series. And then if you want to play similar stuff that's not as good, go with the DS stuff. If you want to go back to the classic stuff and play the old action games, go for that. But Symphony of the Night, I think, takes everything that's great about Castlevania and puts it in one just gorgeous package. And the only other downfall of this game is the fucking Medusa heads. I hate them. Oh my god. That is like my number one most annoying enemy in a video game ever. And it's worse, it's worse back in the old games, the Medusa heads. But even in these Metroidvania style ones, I cannot stand. And whenever I see him come on the stage, I instantly just get pissed off. So hate Medusa heads. But anyway, like I said, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, just 32-bit perfection, absolute perfection. And it, seeing this logo down here, it makes me a little sad nowadays, because Konami is just not what it used to be. And if you want to listen to all those reports of working conditions under Konami that the Konami employees have to go through, it sounds pretty pretty bad. So yeah, kind of a sad thing, because Castlevania and Silent Hill, Metal Gear to a certain extent, Suikoden, but Suikoden's been a victim of Konami for, I don't even know when the last one came out, to be honest with you. I can't remember the date. But Konami had a lot of great games, and now they're just kind of pissing in the wind. So, but this one is a great one. Track it down. And that is it. Yeah, I got nothing else to say about Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It's absolute perfection. 10 out of 10. Except for the voice acting. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Take care. I'll see you next time.